Hello everyone, welcome back to the Scroll Ensemble Classical Music Improvisation channel. I'm Robert and this video is part of a series inspired by Johann Joachim Quantz's method from 1752. An intro to this series and the other videos, for example about essential ornaments or cadenzas, can be found through clicking on here or on the link in the description below. In this video I will discuss some general ideas about adding ornamentation to slow movements, such as style and where to ornament how. Quantz writes that the Adagio is the place where a true musician can show their skill. This skill was mostly found in the realm of the improvisation. We already know that Quantz divides ornamentation in two styles, the French and Italian. And the French style uses only the essential ornaments, and the Italian includes essential and free ornamentation. But this is not necessarily geographical. Quantz writes in chapter 13, almost no one outside of France would have been happy only playing the essential ornaments. At the same time, Quantz mentions that Italian composers are adding more and more of the ornamentation they want into their music, not wanting it to be destroyed by the performer, and in this way, veering more towards the French style. So far, this description has been quite analytical, but the following is Quantz's very practical example of an adagio with French ornamentation. In the Italian style, we do add extensive extra ornaments as well as some of these little French ornaments. And this requires knowledge of composition, or at least basso continuo. Interestingly, Quantz mentions that many singers in his time don't have this knowledge and always need a master at hand to learn the correct ornaments for each new aria. Apparently, not everyone was able to improvise even in the past. And at the end of the chapter follows an example of an adagio with this mixed style of ornamentation, which I will discuss in more detail in a later video. But here you can already hear a preview just to hear the difference. Quantz suggests that if we only played the French embellishments here, the adagio would sound French, which is cool, but that this does not work for this piece. What do you think? So, as we will see in a later video, Quantz gives us an example of how to ornament an adagio. His example is literally filled to the brim with ornaments. And he sort of argues that this particular example would not sound nice without these ornaments, because the melody is very simple, the harmony moves slowly, and there's not that much happening in the bass. Seemingly in contrast to this example, he discusses some types of slow movements where ornamentation should definitely not look like this. I assumed he mentioned these particular types of movements because they are the most common, at least to him. And I was surprised to find it very difficult to find these movements in his own gazillions of flute sonatas. I suppose this means that most slow movements fall in the category where quite a lot of ornamentation is possible. When the Adagio is especially melancholy, for example when it's indicated as Adagio di molto or Lento Assai, then you must focus your ornamentation more on slurred notes than jumps and trills. Although some trills must always be included, lest the music sound boring. So, Quantz never uses Adagio di molto or Lento Assai, at least that I could find, but Quantz does refer to melancholy as well, so I think this Arioso lamentoso is a fitting example. Interestingly, I think he already shows the type of ornamentation he talks about in this particular movement, so probably very little extra is necessary. I nevertheless tried to add as much as I possibly thought I could, and to see also whether you think maybe this is too much. A grave with lively dotted notes should not be ornamented too heavily. Ornaments should mostly outline the harmony. In stepwise motion, one can add appoggiaturas before the longer notes. These will mostly turn out to be consonant, so don't use too many of those, or again, the music will be boring. An Adagio Spiritoso in triple time with dotted notes and many rests requires more articulation than the grave and at the same time less ornamentation. Appoggiaturas concluded with half shakes are really great, and sometimes there will be cantabile ideas as well, which require more and especially elegant ornamentation, so that the music becomes even more singy. I couldn't find any movement by Quantz or even in the Baroque. Perhaps this Stricha sonata or the then following Telemann sonata follow this description of Quantz of a triple time movement with dotted notes and quite some rests. You can't add much when you find a Cantabile or Arioso in 3/8 with many 16th notes in scales, or probably generally much activity, especially when the bass is very active as well. You can add some appoggiaturas or triplets if there are some quarter notes, and perhaps when the bass remains on one pitch and harmony for a whole bar. But in this case, try to stay within the style of the rest of the piece. Also here, I couldn't actually find any cantabiles with quarter notes or this kind of stagnant bass. So if I find that in the future, you can click above and find a link. An Andante or Larghetto in 3/4, consisting of jumps in quarter notes with an active bass in eighth notes, should be played a bit more seriously and with more ornaments than the Arioso mentioned before. When the bass is moving up and down like a scale, be careful not to form any parallel fifths or octaves between your ornamentation and this scalar bass. Siciliana's, Musette and Bergerie should be played very simply, almost without trills. This simplicity is owed to its origin with the shepherds. So sprinkle with a few slurred sixteenths and appoggiaturas at most. Here Quantz seems to also already have applied most ornamentation himself. For very flat, more harmonic than melodic adagios, don't add too many ornaments. The original melody must still be recognizable. Especially the first time that the principal subject, the first idea of the piece, is played, don't add ornamentation at all. Now this one was the hardest to find, because what is flat and harmonic? My first thought was a memory of a Handel movement, which looks a bit like this. There's not much melody and quite some nice harmonic moments. But then again, wouldn't this be the movement to ornament lots on? Or should it be more like this movement by Weiss, where the harmony is more quirky and clearly a feature? Then I happened onto this Heinichen sonata. What do you think? The melody mostly describes harmonic motifs, and indeed it would be a little silly and not so easy to add a lot of ornamentation. Then again, I wouldn't call this flat, but well, here it goes, and I tried again to add some ornamentation. When we look at another set of example ornamentations by Telemann, the Methodische Sonaten, we see that indeed the movements that Quantz here mentions are not used, except for a simple Siciliana, and so probably this means that Quantz's ideas might be more generally used than just by him. I hope you enjoyed this video. Join my Quantz ornamentation course through the link below. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe and follow us on Patreon if you can, if you haven't already.